Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Clayton.
And my name is James Clayton. What are we doing here, mate?
Well, I think this is my debut in season 8, so I feel like I should probably say hello, introduce myself, like Sujin you did on Monday.
All right,
Uh,
go on then.
I'm Clayton. I'm, I'm a to the Tottenham and West Ham fan. I'm the Arsenal fan, so we're all London,
Boo.
yeah, all London-based fans, and I'm the fourth member of Planet FPL. So Nico works the magic behind the scenes and on Patreon, on camera as well. And yeah, I started season 7 last year, right? I started doing a bit more. I've been a Planet FPL patron since it started in 2020, and yeah, lucky enough to kind of be on and doing a bit more now. So, what is this show then, James? Because you came to me with an idea of a new, what will be weekly show when the season starts, but obviously we're a few weeks out. So, what have the listeners got from us coming up?
It's a pilot episode idea. So if you hate it, don't say nothing. If you really like it, tell us, basically. We've obviously lost Sky Fantasy Football from our schedule. And I went to come up with something that I thought would be kind of a regular spot idea that I thought people would find interesting. And I thought the idea of you and I having a regular show where we go either a bit deeper or cover off perhaps bits that we've missed, perhaps through our Monday, Tuesday shows, would be quite a nice idea. Maybe sort of like one FPL topic and then a range of different, just general football topics that are kind of in the news at the moment. Obviously, at the moment, a lot of news is pre-season and transfer stuff, and we are going to cover a little bit of transfer stuff, but we're also going to look at some of the new additions to the league on the transfer window show tomorrow. So it's a case of bringing perhaps topics we don't cover elsewhere to the table, some fantasy related, but a lot of general football. I think further down the line, we'll do a bit more in terms of talking about tactics on football as well. So we'll just kind of set agendas sort of like the night before and have a chin wag, relaxed, chilled vibe, not too serious.
Yeah, I like it. So, we've got a few topics to kick off today. First one, there's a lot of players with 1 year left in their contract. Specifically players at Liverpool, Chelsea, Newcastle, and yeah, I think Liverpool's probably the place to start. Obviously, new manager, Arnie slots in, but Trent, Salah, Van Dijk, they've all got 1 year left on their contract. What do you think's going to happen there?
I think they'll all end up staying.
All of them.
Yeah, I do. It's worth saying as well, Liverpool one of only two Premier League clubs who haven't made a signing yet this summer. Don't ask me who the other one is because I haven't checked that yet. But there's three huge name players there, all out of contract
Yeah,
for Liverpool next year. I think if you think about Klopp's tenure as Liverpool manager, those three names would be right near the top. You know, during your Firminos and your Manes and perhaps Jordan Henderson and stuff, but those three names would be right amongst it. Certainly, Van Dijk has what was it at the time world record
yeah,
centre back
75 mil, I think it
signing.
was.
Mo Salah, the undisputed king of fantasy Premier League, and obviously Trent, a right back like we'd never seen before, basically. Um, they're at kind of different stages. So what I mean by that is Van Dijk and Mo Salah is coming towards the end. Still
Yeah,
very good players. I mean, Mo still looks in absolutely phenomenal shape for a 32-year-old, although he has had an interesting haircut, let's say. But they don't therefore hold the value of Trent. I think Trent is the really interesting one here because at his age of 25, and being that he came through the youth system there, and we know the impacts of PSR and selling homegrown players at the moment. If something's not agreed with Trent, what do Liverpool do here? What I mean by that is I feel like they might take more of a chance with Salah and particularly Van Dijk. But with Trent, I mean, do you let that go beyond August if there's no agreement in place?
I think given the PSR world and the fact that, like you say, he's homegrown and everything, and we've kind of spoken at length about people cashing 100% in on homegrown players, and that's 100% profit on the books. I think if they don't come to an agreement in terms of a contract extension, I think they'll be looking to try and find suitors for him this summer, to be honest. But like you said before we started, I think the same as you. I think they'll get to an agreement with him. I think they'll sign a contract once he's back from his holidays after the Euros, and I don't think that will be an issue. But if they don't get to an agreement, I'm pretty confident they'll try and find a buyer for him just because that is then a missed opportunity. Like, how much would he even go for? But it's a missed opportunity to just bank 100% profit on the books in this financial
Yeah,
world we're in.
Trent would still be massive valuation. You've got a very
100%.
unique footballer
Yeah.
there. I am suspicious though that it's not being spoken about. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
if
not at all.
there's.
My Liverpool supporting friends message about it, but in the wide news, I feel like I've not seen
Well,
anything
it
about
feels
it.
like, we'll talk about Conor Gallagher in a second. That feels like
Yeah.
when it's in the news every week, and Trent is a far more high profile player. It does make me suspicious that perhaps there is a verbal agreement and everything's quite calm, and perhaps even the
Yeah.
journalists know it. So that may very well be the case that he comes back from the Euros, pen and paper's signed. It almost feels like a new signing under that basis. It's important, and Liverpool aren't doing a lot of business at the moment, which is perhaps a deeper conversation we might come back to in August if they don't start doing some business.
Yeah.
But it might be that the club's priority is to deal with these three players first. In Mo's case, he's obviously been linked with moving to the Middle East quite heavily. I don't know if Liverpool will be so desperate to cash in or not.
Do you think they'll
I
just
just think
chance that for next summer?
yeah, I just think about it from the value perspective. Let's just say, I mean, 50 million. He's
Yeah.
32.
Yeah, yeah, but it still his output isn't
No, I get that.
dropping at all, is it?
Um, but what's the value of 50 million over the course of a season for Liverpool now with kind of almost a guarantee of what he will provide for them?
Yeah, that's the thing. And their objectives, like I'd say, probably solidify top four this year, try and win a cup. I think,
Oh yeah, I mean, of course, their target will be to finish top four again as an
yeah,
absolute minimum, and I'm sure there's plenty of Liverpool fans will expect them to challenge for the title again. I think that's going to be a very difficult challenge just purely because of the change in manager. Van Dijk, I don't foresee a circumstance particularly where he leaves here this
no.
summer. I think
But do you
that's
think
one
that's
we'll
something
take a
again?
chance on.
Do you think that's something where I think previously what we would see is clubs would offer these players like a one year extension just to
Yeah.
protect value. Do you think something like that will happen, or do you think he'll just go on a free next year?
Well, I think there's a lot of power in probably the player perspective where, let's say, Liverpool want to trigger a 1 year extension on Mo Salah. I'm going to give you an example a bit later on of a 1 year extension that will be triggered in the next month on this. But with Mo, players at this age are now thinking about the end, right? And
Yeah,
if someone puts like a 3 year contract on the table at his age, and it's 500 grand a week, for example,
yeah.
it's
Nice way
your
to see out your
it's
career
your retirement
financially.
fund, isn't it? So
Yeah,
Salah feels like the one where suddenly something might move. I remember going into the start of FPL last season, and actually in the week leading up to game week 1, there was a lot of noise really suddenly.
it really picked up. Yeah,
Yeah, that he might be off and going to Saudi. And I think the general conclusion back last summer was that it was a deal that probably would happen this summer. He's also Liverpool's only experienced attacker that's in training at the moment, though, because all the others, obviously Jota, Diaz, Gakpo, Nunes, and you could even throw Alexis McAllister into that as well. Obviously, went really deep in the international tournaments that aren't there at the moment.
yeah.
So my suspicion is that all three players will stay at Liverpool this summer, and I do think that Trent will probably put pen on a new
Me too.
contract.
And I
I'm
think
very I'm very suspicious, like I said, that the media aren't really reporting on it.
yeah, same. And I think the same as you. And I think next year they'll kind of assess how's year one gone under slot and then kind of look to kind of reinvest in the squad and kind of rebuild properly then financially. Where do you want to go next? Chelsea or Newcastle?
Now let's talk a bit of Chelsea. There's bits that we know that are quite interesting. The first bit that people might forget is Kepa Arrizabalaga, who is he still the most expensive goalkeeper in history?
I forgot he was
He's got to
at
be
all.
one of the
Yeah.
most expensive flops, hasn't he, from that perspective? Hold on, James. He asked not to be subbed in a Carabao Cup final. Yes, I realise he's had some success. I do get that, but that was a massive panic buy, wasn't it? If ever you've seen a panic buy, that was the one when
Yeah.
obviously Courtois went and
Yeah, he was the one.
they bought Kepa. And actually, I don't think he's as bad as many other people have made out, but he's had some really bad spells. I think he struggled particularly with long distance
Yeah.
shots. He's out of contract, but he's been out of sight and out of mind because he's been at Real Madrid. He's an almost definite leaver, and Chelsea
Yeah.
can expect some money for him, although it won't be 72 million. I'm fairly certain of that.
I was just
And
going to ask though, do you think they'd recoup anything substantial?
now you're just
His
letting to get a
value's rock bottom now,
you're just
isn't it?
letting to get a fee, and yeah,
Yeah.
I think cover off sort of maybe 3 times his contract of the year or something like that. Chelsea are being heavily linked with a goalkeeper from Villarreal, I believe, over the last 24 hours or so. So those who've been looking at like Sanchez for your FPL team and that, I'd be backing off that at the moment.
Yeah.
But there were two English players who are out of contract, which is causing a lot of noise at the moment. Trevor Chalobah has, we know, been left out of Chelsea's squad that's travelled to America. And we think the word is that he's been told, look, find yourself suitors, and Chelsea will probably accept a fee somewhere between sort of 30, 40 million. Whether they're going to get quite that much, because people will know the situation. It's going to be
Yeah.
wait. I can imagine it. And a lot of these will be a week before. Okay, you want to start talking now, or even on the day.
Chelsea
Really
are
put
quite
pressure
good
on.
at getting good fees for their players, to be fair.
This
I
is
don't know how
true.
they do it, but yeah.
This is absolutely true. But the point with Chalobah, and people can debate whether he's first choice or not, it's another one where it's like you spunk this, that, and the other money, and you're letting another homegrown one go. Like, how long does this model last?
I think
Also,
in the PSR world, it's a model that annoyingly works very well
I
for them
hate it,
because
and I'm
yeah, I
sure
hate it too, but
it's
with the
interesting.
rule,
Most of the Chelsea fans that I have contact with really dislike what's happening at the
yeah,
moment.
same in
Really
the
dislike it,
circles I am,
and
yeah.
they seem to. I think Chelsea fans they're going through kind of passages of good and bad. So they obviously ended the season really well. Pochettino goes, you're like, what have you done?
Yeah,
Okay, you get an explanation, maybe understand it. You appoint a new manager, you have a little bit of optimism. Then there was the stuff with like Enzo last week, and
yeah,
now there's this where you kind of hope that they'll look after you're losing your identity a bit. I think when your kids leave, if you think of it like that, your kids leave
yeah.
home, it does hit a little bit differently. And I'm not going to put anyone under the bus, but there's a source that I trust who I saw quote tweeted something last night. I don't want to put him up the bus under the bus because I don't know that source, but I do believe that that person quote tweeted it because they believed it was true. And there's someone that I do trust. And they said that the quote tweet essentially suggested that Conor Gallagher is going to get told the same.
Oh wow, go and
Go
find
and
another club, yeah.
go and find a club because he's in the
And
same
he's got
position,
one year left, hasn't
one
he?
year left on his contract. As I said earlier, Gallagher feels like he's been in the news every week,
Well,
particularly linked
Tottenham
to
were
his
heavily
age.
linked, weren't they?
Tottenham, Aston Villa as well. Subject to what that fee is going to be. Chelsea are not going to get the fee that they'd wanted last year, but clearly the way they're operating are obviously very conscious about their finances. If Gallagher, who I'm pretty sure does want to stay at Chelsea, doesn't put pen to
Isn't
paper,
he their club captain?
he loves the club, but
Yeah,
also I think he's looking at it and going, the power at his age that he can have by not signing that contract and what he can ask for from the club then next year, because a club like Chelsea is not going to lose their asset for nothing. And obviously he can
no.
talk to overseas
And
clubs
it's
in January and start saying, well, Atletico Madrid are offering me 400 grand a week. What are you going to do about it? Perhaps
yeah,
a little bit of a hyper over exaggeration there, but he's got a lot of power.
yeah, he does. But yeah, from like what you say, I think Chelsea, when it's one year left, similar to Trent, if he's not going to extend, given that he's homegrown, and particularly with Chelsea's kind of financial modelling, they need to pocket that 100% homegrown cash. So I think there'll be, yeah, if there's no contract extension on the table, and like you said, this source saying he's been told to find suitors, I think that makes sense. Just looking to pocket the money. But I'm with you. It's not nice to hear of homegrown players just being treated as kind of cash cows, but that's the way it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, I suspect Gallagher will go,
Yeah,
um,
me too.
unless there's
Do you
no
think Tottenham will
agreement in
go back
place.
in, or was that purely an opportunistic 30th of June kind of thing?
Well, it's still an opportunistic now, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because clearly you might think I could say to you 40 million you might think that's a lot for Conor Gallagher, right? But with a year left on his contract, quite clearly, if he had 4 years left on his contract, you certainly would not be paying that fee for him because of the value of what he means to Chelsea. You'd be
yeah,
paying a lot more money, right? So it is still opportunistic for anyone who wants to go and buy him now. I think, if he becomes available for sort of 35, 40, he could end up going anywhere, I
yeah.
think. Would you be
Really
that
intrigued to see
shocked
where he
if he
ends
ended
up.
up at even like a City or a Liverpool?
I was just gonna say I could see him at Liverpool. I feel like he fits that kind. I don't know if that's just like a lazy. They had like a Henderson pressing midfield, like, but yeah, I could definitely see him at Liverpool.
Yeah,
Not
and
sure about a
I,
City,
I
but
no, I know. I was just going to say I know people flinch at the idea of Manchester City, but I think they have a massive pressing problem.
they do. But technically, I'm not sure if he's.
I
Yeah,
understand where you're at with that. The other club I wanted to speak about was Newcastle.
yeah. This caught me by surprise.
So they've got a lot, and it's not a huge problem here for Newcastle. But there's a lot of particularly defensive players who are out of contract at the end of next year. There's a few more attacking players. So Sean Longstaff is one. I guess he's probably going to leave because that's one again. Newcastle could put some money on the books, even if it is, 8 to 10 million or something like that. And I'm sure it would be more, by the way. But that's something Newcastle could book as 100% profit.
Yeah,
Callum Wilson is 32. Injury issues may well move on in this window.
yeah,
I think. I think subject to if people could pay his wages, but he would be a really good signing for a bottom half Premier League team.
yeah.
Um,
He guarantees you a certain amount of goals a season.
he absolutely does. The problem is getting him
Does he
fit
guarantee
for
you the
long
games?
enough. And
Yeah,
Isak has began to show, fingers crossed for him, that he can sustain fitness a little bit more. And therefore the requirement is not there so much. Plus, I think Newcastle know that they can put Anthony Gordon there, for example, particularly say with Harvey Barnes also
yeah,
back from injury this season. But they've got a lot of the defensive ones who are out of contract at the end of this year. And you could say it's an aging backline. Now, within that, you've got Tino Livramento's been invested in, Lewis Hall, Lloyd Kelly, Jamal Lascelles is out of contract. Dan Burn will be out of contract. Fabian Schär will be out of contract. And so will Kieran Trippier.
yeah. That's a lot of
Um,
churn potentially in the
and I've
back
seen
line.
Kieran Trippier knocking about in a few FPL drafts, and I'm absolutely certain that
He's not going to be there, is he?
he's not going to be there.
I don't think he will either.
No, there was large rumours that went round long before the season had even finished that like Trippier told the school that the kids were leaving and stuff like
Okay,
that. And I
they're
think
my
there's a
favorite kind of rumors.
yeah. But it's worth saying Newcastle ITKs are notoriously bad. It's worth
Are
saying
they okay?
they are. But we think that Newcastle might even be trying to push him out because he's on a big salary. They've been on the edge of PSR, so looking at a bit of a restructuring. You've got a ready-made replacement there, essentially, in
Yeah,
Livramento.
Livramento, who's recovered from
Absolutely.
his injury, looks like he's recovered well as well. Yeah.
Yep. So there might be a case that even they're maybe even pushing Trippier out. Trippier
Okay.
struggled last year. He did a right for England in the summer, particularly playing out of position. You must remember that. But it might even be that Newcastle are pushing the door, and I think he's open to the idea of taking one more big kind
Like a
of
nice
retirement
payday.
salary check
So where's
overseas.
he
Yeah,
linked? Is he linked with like Saudi or
he's been linked with Saudi. I think he's
okay?
been linked with clubs in Turkey as well over the last week or so. So I think he's probably going to move on. There is a knock on to fantasy of that if Trippier did go, yes, Livramento is 4.5.
Yeah.
Um, and you can stop with your Dan Burn stuff. Um, so one to keep an eye on over the course of this, maybe where Newcastle might look at one or two of those defensive ones, but I think it probably is just Trippier that will move. I think Callum Wilson will probably move on.
What do you think will happen with Cher and Big Tasty them?
Well, Lascelles and Sven Botman are going to be out till sort of New Year because of injuries, unfortunately. So I imagine with Lascelles, that's probably a great servant for the club. He's obviously been club captain. That's probably okay. Let that run till the end. Fabian Schär probably more one the Newcastle want to trigger some sort of extension. What you said, like that extra year, for example. I want to talk about some of the other big names just before we move on. I think that there's a few worth mentioning if, from a list of players that are out of contract. Kevin De Bruyne.
He's been heavily linked the last few days with a move, hasn't he?
So there are Pep Guardiola quotes surfacing from across the last 24 hours that said that he will not be leaving.
Ha, never mind.
So I presume you can kill that one.
Yeah.
Um,
As an Arsenal fan, I was getting my hopes up, thinking, "Oh yeah, De Bruyne's going," but never
I'm
mind.
going to
Cheers,
say
Pep.
the most bizarre. You know how I feel about it. For me, he's probably the best midfielder in Premier League history. I genuinely feel that strongly about how good he is and his ability has been. I don't think it's until he's gone, people will go,
Realize how
"Christ,
good he
shit, Kevin
was.
De Bruyne was
Yeah.
really good." But I
What's
think
the
he's,
but?
but I think he's becoming a
You
problem.
think he's a bit past it? Oh, okay.
No, he's not. Of course,
Problem.
he's not past it. Of course,
Yeah,
he's
no,
not.
sorry. I was
But
putting
he's
words in your mouth
becoming a
there.
different footballer. And Kevin,
When you
Pete,
say he's a problem, what are you thinking there?
it's what I'd already
The
mentioned.
pressing,
It's the off the ball stuff. He works hard, and I think Erling Haaland works hard. But are they good as pressers together? And essentially, that's how City end up without the ball, 4-4-2, those two at the front. I think they can be quite easy to play through that first line.
which is scary considering they still put 91 points on the board. Their
Yeah,
level is an
but I
absolute joke.
think it's going to come to a head a little bit.
Yeah.
I really do.
Well,
Um,
you could see it in the towards the back end of the season, right? They were kind of wrapping him in cotton wool, like rolling him out for the big occasions, really managing his load and his minutes. How much can he contribute to a full season if he stays injury free? That I'm not so sure about anymore.
if you look at Kobe Mainoo's goal in the FA Cup final, um, I think that's really alarming, and that's not on De Bruyne or Haaland at all. By the way,
But
that's
more
that's a
like a
team problem,
systematic.
but I think it's a team problem caused partially by what's happening a little bit further up the pitch.
Interesting.
Was he not taken off in the final with like half hour to go, De Bruyne?
I
Am I
can't
right in
remember.
saying that? I think he was.
Can't remember.
And you just can't believe City would have ever done that in the past
No.
when they're
It's
losing a football
interesting
match.
what
And
you
I
say
remember
though.
thinking that's the right decision.
Yeah, it is interesting what you say though, because I remember last season thinking in the early period of that dangerous trap I fell into of like City don't look the same. And I remember thinking the same thing. They look a bit more easier to play through this season than in previous years. But I never really made that connection of maybe it's because of what's starting from the front, like you said.
Yeah, I think so. I've had times where I've thought that yeah, when they've got it, yeah, good luck, right? But I think there'll be more opportunities to damage them this year if they stay with that sort of setup.
Well, and yeah, let's see if they strengthen in the window as well. But
It's worth saying, if he does stay and stuff, am I saying City won't win the league
no,
without him? No, I'm going to predict that they won't, by the way. But it's also worth saying Pep has several times over found new ways of tweaking things to make
yeah.
stuff better. It's kind of same with like Vardiel towards the end of the season.
But yeah, like you said, Pep's rubbished those rumors. So for now, De Bruyne is staying. A big one.
I'll rubbish another big name that's on this list, which is Heung-Min Son.
Yeah, so he's got
Tottenham,
1 year
Tottenham,
left.
yep, Tottenham have an option to trigger another year.
Okay.
They can just
And
trigger
it's
it when
not
it.
a negotiation, it's just like a boom, automatic.
Yeah,
Have they
they
triggered it yet?
Tottenham have that with quite a number of players. They haven't.
Any idea of why?
We are playing in Asia at the moment.
Oh, big marketing opportunity
Don't
for
yeah, don't be surprised if it's in the next 2 weeks or so.
that. That's smart, to be fair. From a business perspective, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it might get done over the next 2 weeks or so. I have said that I think the other thing to say, and again, this is one that's not in the news, and it's going back to Trent that makes me think, oh, maybe it's not a problem because no one's talking about Son going either.
Yeah. Maybe
You know,
they've
oh, Son's got a year
agreed.
left on
And
his contract. Yeah, no one's talking about it, and that I certainly know the Tottenham side on that is yeah, there's definitely an option to trigger that for next year.
what's your thoughts on like how long you think he's got left? Because he's 32 now. And
I think if
like,
Tottenham received a really big bid for him, they should sell him.
okay. So do you think it'll be a case of like they'll because they
He's
probably
32 as well.
yeah. Yeah, so they probably
Um,
are gonna, like you say, kind of do that extension. So then they'll have a couple of years left. Do you think they'll be looking next summer at kind of future proofing and
well,
planning and doing out?
As Ange had also said at the end of the season, he kind of cut it really short. It was like, nah, that Heung-Min Son. I think the quote he said was, "I wish I had 10 Heung-Min Sons" or something like that.
Right.
So Ange obviously does love him and stuff as well. I think it's one you have to look at and go. The thing is, though, with Son particularly, exactly what we said, the potential exposure to announce this extension while the football club is out in Asia and while he's there as
100%.
well, and he's back home. They're in Japan at the moment, and then I think they go to Korea, like sort of start of next week. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if it's announced next week.
Oh, 100. That makes so much sense. Yeah.
Um, I forgot my train of thought. What I was going to say. Oh, about his marketable value. So you could say with Son, okay, sell him for 60, he's 32 million, for example. But what are Tottenham raking in terms of income by him being now?
Yeah,
So
loads. All the
it's a
yeah,
double catch sword there. And I guess there's a certain element of that with Liverpool and Mo Salah as well. But obviously, Son in Asia is like a god.
yeah,
So he's such a marketable asset as well that obviously that makes him a different transfer value to player X
yeah. Of course.
because of what he is. So again, his value to Tottenham, you can say, what's his value as a footballer? Yeah, but his value to Tottenham because of what he is way more.
Yeah, there's other sources
So
of commercial revenue with him.
it
Yeah,
would have to be big, but I think if it was really big, then I think the football club should particularly think about it. But I don't know the numbers of how much Heung-Min Son specifically brings into the football club, and it's going to be in the millions that
yeah.
he alone brings into that football club.
Another
Uh,
high profile one, Ivan Toney. So
yeah,
he struggled when he came back from his ban. He
was it
didn't
12
set the
games
world.
without a goal?
Yeah, didn't really do well. But then I'd say at the Euros, he more than kind of made up for it with his contribution to England. So what do you think's going to happen here? Because they've obviously signed, is it Igor Thiago?
Yes, new forward they bought from Bruges, I think.
Yeah, and he scored a brace in pre-season. I've seen a few people getting excited, and obviously we'll be talking a little bit about him tomorrow in the transfer window show. But he seems highly rated. So do you think it will play with Tony? Is Tony going to go elsewhere? What do you
And
think will happen
he
here?
falls under a profile where I'd said to you previously, profile wise, he could really be a Tony replacement for them.
Yeah.
Um, the issue that Ivan Tony's got at the moment is he didn't finish the season well from a goal scoring perspective. Obviously, he had the big period with the ban. Before the ban came in, I think a lot of the clubs were really thinking, "I want to take this player," as
Arsenal
in
were
as in the
heavily
biggest
linked with
clubs.
him for a period.
Do you remember we spoke about it? I think it might have even ended up being his last appearance, maybe his performance at Anfield. Um, Obviously not last year, the year before. They
Yep.
lost 1-0. He was brilliant
He was
as
phenomenal
in
in that.
terms of
Yeah.
his hold up and his link. You could see that he was on the pitch at Anfield enjoying it and running it as an
Yeah.
opposing player and was like, yeah, this is my stage.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the so-called big six, etc., at that point would have gone, yeah, I'll take. Move forward a year, you've now got this contract situation where there's a year left on his contract. There have been plenty of noises in the media, it's worth saying, that there are some concerns about him and his
Like his
potential
attitude.
attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I personally don't see anything that makes me question his attitude, but that's what's been reported by some circles of the media. It's thought that that may have put some clubs off.
For what it's worth,
Um,
I've seen within Arsenal circles, that seems to be all of the speculation on why Arsenal didn't actually pursue that.
and the word at this moment is no one's interested.
Mm.
No one.
I find that really surprising because I think, yeah, like you say, when you see him lighting it up at Anfield, you know his capability. And I always think with players like that, if you plug him into another team with better players around him and stuff, can he almost go up a level himself? So I find that interesting that no one's interested at all.
Oh, I think clubs are interested.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I think Brentford is a case you and I have spoken about in the past. I think particularly them and Brighton, two relatively, with respect, small clubs within the Premier League, are two clubs, however, who absolutely will not get done over on value.
No, they're probably two of the best run football clubs in the league.
Correct. And I think clubs know you don't want to have that conversation with Brentford. But with each passing day, this becomes more of a problem now for Brentford. Brentford is a rare case where Brentford are losing their control on what's happening. Actually, basically happened, I want to say, with David Raya last year as well,
Yeah.
because I think it was a
I,
similar scenario, wasn't it?
to be fair with them, I actually think they did Arsenal a favour there because Arsenal, I think, with the PSR window, didn't have the money to spend. So I think there was like a mutually beneficial deal that went on there.
Yeah, but I think Brentford probably didn't quite get the money that probably would have wanted.
Perhaps.
I'm
Yeah.
sure there's probably something in the book somewhere that says you'll have first option on player X or you'll have this player on loan at some point
Ha, maybe.
as a thank you. Yeah, I'm sure these things absolutely happen. No, I think clubs do want Ivan Toney, but I think clubs don't want to have the conversation with Brentford while Brentford still have a card to play. I think they want to have those conversations with Brentford when Brentford don't have any cards left to play, and Brentford's choice becomes keep or sell.
Gun to your head, what do you think happens? Stays or goes?
think he goes,
Really?
but I think he goes late in the window.
I think there'll be
I
a
think he probably starts the season with Brentford.
okay, and then a late swoop in for him from someone. So
Yeah, I
interested to
think
see where
so.
he goes if he does.
Um, it's also a fault that I mean, two clubs that have been mentioned. One is my own,
Okay,
but I
can you
doesn't
see
sit.
him in the Ange
Can I? Yeah, of
system?
course. Yeah, I mean, would I probably rather look at Tony next year or Richarlison? It's Tony. I'm not sure it
But
quite.
profile,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
not sure it quite fits in.
me
I'm
either
not
from the
sure.
outside looking in.
Love him as a player. I'm just not sure it fits my club system. West Ham, we think, is the
That's
club that's made
so
the
weird.
most noises,
I
but
was
they've
just
also
gonna
been
say I
heavily
could
linked
see,
with John Duran of
yeah,
Aston Villa.
I was literally just gonna say I could see him being like a perfect fit at West Ham.
Now, with Tony, and there's probably a mental aspect for him here as well, is he may well end up at West Ham because if West Ham paid big money and Brentford go, this is what we've accepted, you're going to go. And no one else shows. If he looks around, it's like, well, where's Tottenham, where's Chelsea, wherever, and they don't come calling, he'll probably go.
Yeah,
But when Tony was putting in that performance at Anfield, I don't think that what he envisaged that day was ending up at West Ham.
no, but obviously a lot has happened and changed since then, right? And I think even from Brentford's perspective, you know how we say like they're one of the two best run clubs in the league. They're not going to want to let an asset like Tony go on a free next year.
But then to
They're
come
going
back to say the value of, say, Mo Salah guarantees me a certain amount of goals, it's believed that Brentford are probably lowering their fee to towards about sort of 50 million, right? I think we'd said this time last year, we were saying like 80 million
to
or so,
70,
right?
80, yeah.
So it's a big drop off. You're going to sort of nearly 100% under almost, 50% under, sorry. So now he might be thinking, well, these aren't the clubs I want. And also from Brentford's perspective, if he does stay but goes on a free transfer and he scores the goals that means they stay up in the Premier League rather than go down,
Yeah,
what's the value to Brentford?
yeah.
So
Probably
Brentford
covers
do
that
hold
though.
a little bit of a card in the sense that I don't think, someone goes, oh, there's 30 million. They'll look at that and go, is it worth taking the 30 million versus what he'll be for us this season? You'd probably go no.
Yeah, fair point.
So it's still
Didn't
got to
think of
be a
it like
certain
that.
amount of size on it. I think it'll be a really late deal though.
Yeah. I think there'll be a lot like that this summer. I think there'll be a lot of
And
late
I think
opportunistic
he'll
ones.
probably still end up at one of the top eight,
Yeah, I
rather
reckon so.
than sorry, West Ham.
Should we move it
Um,
on?
yeah, let's talk a little bit about 6.5 FPL midfielders. It's not something we've gone into particularly in terms of a specific price. And we're not going to go into stats here or anything like that. You've got the wrong podcast, kids. There are 29 players listed at 6.5 million
There's
in
quite a few
midfield,
nice ones in there.
and something in there has got to be good.
Someone will pop off, surely.
Yeah, who'd you fancy to be that one?
So right now, if you had to put money on it, I would say it is Nkunku. That feels like a bit of a cop out because I feel like every man and their dog's saying that, but that's my honest opinion. I think if he, like, we know when Chelsea signed him, like he's a goal scorer. Like the fact that he's a 6.5 million midfielder, if he plays, obviously we have to see how he recovers from the injury. I think you said Chelsea are playing tonight in pre-season,
Yeah,
so keep an eye on that.
and
But
there were some Enzo Maresca comments this morning saying he's doing really, really well in training. He's impressing, and he also said he can play on the left. He can play as the nine. He can play anywhere.
hello.
And as Gary Mantle said to our patrons this morning, let's hope he plays a few games in goal because we get 10 points for a goal next season. But if he plays number nine tonight, you know where this is heading.
Oh yeah, our ownership's gonna
I mean, he's been
skyrocket.
sitting in my draft since the game opened
I
anyway.
still I still haven't made a draft, James.
Have you not?
I'm trying to hold off as long as I can.
All right, good
But
luck with that.
yeah. But there's a few on there, like Bailey with Diaby now gone. Szoboszlai, I know you've got some thoughts on Liverpool
Yeah,
and
I
how
think
they may
one of
operate.
Szoboszlai or McAllister will be really good at one point this season. I'm just not sure which
Which
one
one?
yet, and we're not going to get that info prior to pre-season because
Do you want to add some
of
context on why you think
McAllister's.
that? Because I know it's like a brief tactical thing you've got.
Yeah, I think you might get, although despite his protestations, not necessarily playing that, and he said more of a sort of a 4-3-3. I think it will look like a 4-2-3-1 at quite a bit, and I think the 10 is not likely to be a Gakpo. I think it's more, or a Jota. I think it's more likely to be a McAllister, a Szoboszlai, an Elliot. someone that will be much more comfortable coming more towards the ball from higher positions.
Sure.
Because what they like to do is spread further up and drag towards the ball and perhaps either go beyond or play through. And Slot likes to congest games even when they've got possession with sort of just one wide outlet. So I can see McAllister or Szoboszlai becoming more of a number 10 this year. I don't know which way round, and I wouldn't be surprised that we even see both tried. You might get Szoboszlai as an 8 in one, McAllister as a 10, and then fast forward a couple of weeks, he tries it the other way round. I think you might even get stuff like that. But with McAllister coming back from the Copa America, we're not gonna get clarity on that. But you
No.
might get Szoboszlai plays that position in pre-season, does really well,
And starts the
and people
season.
then look at Liverpool's fixtures, and then you go, "Well, I haven't seen a lot of Gakpo, Jota, Nunez, Diaz because they've all been away." As said, do I want to look at something like that? So if you were going to go one, it's obviously would only be Szoboszlai, but it's probably avoidable till. The
Until you
problem
get
is with
more
Liverpool, you do
information,
want to
right?
hit it at the start.
It's the fixtures at the start, yeah.
They play Seville on the Sunday before the season starts. That's going to be your
It's usually
only
the
game.
final preseason game before the season starts is usually when you can say with like 85, 90% confidence that will be the team that starts the season.
This is why I've left Liverpool to the last episode on Correspondent Week. He's
Nice.
hoping we get as much information as possible before we end it, basically.
There's a few of the Tottenham boys in there at 6.5. Brennan Johnson,
Yeah,
Kulusevski, Werner.
Johnson's the standout of them. I mean, remember Kulusevski's haul in game week 38 was playing as a false nine, and there has been no suggestion in the first two preseason games that that's going to happen again. Just a point on Leon Bailey. Just something to factor in with him is obviously Villa's involvement in the Champions League this year. He did really well in terms of keeping his fitness last year, but I think Villa and Unai Emery managed him really well.
Yeah.
I think he is established as a first choice player now, but I also think he'll play a lot of them Champions League games, and that's worth bearing in
Limited
mind.
minutes in the league, then
Got to
maybe.
remember as well, the first game of the Champions League is between game week 4 and 5. The draw will and the knowledge of the fixtures will be probably just before game week 3 starts. So you've not got a lot of time. Certainly not in pre-season. You're not going to have the information. Oh shit, Villa have got Real Madrid in their first Champions League game.
Yeah.
Could they rest him in game week 4? Remember, Villa, perversely for someone like Bailey, Villa have obviously got really good fixtures, say like 3-6 or 3-7. But then if they've got hard Champions League games around that, he ain't going to play all the Premier League games.
No.
I'd be very
Or
aware of
limited
that.
minutes, like
And
60,
you
65.
you're not
Yeah.
going to have that information going in. Plus, also, even if they are easier fixtures on paper, just think about the psychology of Villa playing in the Europe's Premier competition for the first time since 1982, I think.
Yeah.
And Kunku, I think, is the standout. Pascal Gross, another one we think will leave. I think
Yeah.
we both think that Rice and Rodri, actually, it's fair enough, but no one particularly wants to pay it for those two players. And especially as obviously they played in European Championship final as well. I think Jeremy Doku was dropped cheap enough.
He's
But
someone that feels
that's,
like he'll be interesting in spells of the
yeah,
season.
maybe. I'd expected him to be a little bit more actually because there is an explosive nature to it. Savio is a player that we'll talk a little bit more about tomorrow. That's a promise to you guys. Jadon Sancho, we think might leave Manchester United. One I'm keen to keep an eye on is Harvey Barnes.
Yep, like you said, if Gordon
Um,
goes through the
but
middle sometimes.
but again, I'm not going to really get the information, am I? Because Gordon's going to return quite late.
Yeah.
So if Harvey Barnes starts every game on the left in Newcastle's pre-season, what does that mean for me when Gordon's back? Does it mean Gordon takes his place? Does it mean Gordon's moving to the right or maybe even a more central role? I think either of those two players could play as tens on occasion, by the way. He's one I want to keep an eye on, Harvey Barnes. Morgan Gibbs-White
My
is going to
boy.
prove popular. Personally, I prefer the million saving on Cho, or Callum Hudson-Odoi has said. Mohamed Kudus, it
Yeah, I
gets some
think that's an interesting one.
interest. Yeah, it absolutely is. And Huang and Neto is kind of fine that they've come in at 6.5,
Huang
but
was someone last season. He went on a really nice run, didn't he?
and I think Cunha's in at the same price as a forward, isn't he? But the Wolves start is dreadful, as I've covered a few times. Brennan Johnson would be the Tottenham one of the three. I think what I do like with Johnson, I said this a lot towards the end of last season, is even as a substitute, it could get you returns and almost just as likely because he's coming on against tired defenders and he just wants to get into position. He's every goal he scores is the same bloody goal in it. I'm
Yeah.
going to get off the right. I'm going to get on the end of that low cross on the left. He's already scored one of them in pre-season again at Hearts last week.
So would you feel, because I'm the way I play FPL is like I only like to have players that are what I think are 90-minute men. So I don't really go for people that I think
Brennan
are minutes
Johnson
risks. But
wouldn't fall into that category. You'd have to say that. That
yeah,
said, Kulusevski's largely been used in a central role so far in pre-season. So the only two players that have been used on the right in pre-season for Tottenham so far are Brennan Johnson and Mikey Moore.
okay, and yeah, Mikey Moore,
Um,
as talented as he is, he's not going to threaten weekly, is he?
Mikey
To
Moore is
start,
is
yeah,
is 16, which is a nice probably segue. I think Nkunku is clearly my favourite at the moment.
same.
I think the others I've got an eye on. Johnson would be one. Harvey Barnes, I think he's the other. I think they're my favourite. So I'm not so keen on Bailey because of what I just said.
Yeah, I
Um,
based on what you said, it's Szoboszlai or McAllister. I want to see if I can punt because I listened to the Talking Tactics piece you did on Patreon, and yeah, I fancy me at one of the Liverpool number 10s if they go with that system. So yeah, pre-season I'll be there, and Dan Loco Lord, I'll be listening.
Mitoma worth watching as well if he has a good pre-season, etc. and stuff. Yeah, Tottenham. I just cover cut a little bits because normally we do Tottenham or Tottenham Arsenal on Patreon. We haven't got any of that this week. Um, I was at QPR Saturday. I'm not going to go back into the heart stuff, but I cut the notes I thought were worth mentioning. Particularly Mikey Moore, our patrons will know I've eulogized about a lot. Again,
Huge
he's
talent, yeah.
16, and you can see the talent is an absolute joke. However, you do get a slightly different perspective of things when you're at a football stadium. And where he will be short at the moment is top level fitness. And
Okay.
that is completely understandable as a 16-year-old. Remember a very big difference with Lamine Yamal, and we can't just compare every kid with Lamine Yamal.
Yeah, he's
But
a
Lamine
unicorn.
Yamal is like a tank, right? He's like a mini Adama Traore, right? Like he don't look
Yeah,
like a 16-year-old. He's power, isn't he?
yeah, yeah.
So he's quite unique in that extent that Lamine Yamal does not look like a child on a football pitch,
No,
right? Mikey Moore doesn't look like a child, but he does clearly look like a very young player.
sure.
And he wouldn't be, I think, ready to go straight into um, first team starting at the moment, primarily because of a fitness concern.
Did you
But
have that same feeling when he came on? Because he came on in the Premier League last season, right? In the
he saw
game.
so little of it. He was getting like
Okay,
5-10 minutes in the last couple of games, Clay. So
right.
you couldn't really tell.
Not enough
Plus,
to tell.
also, I mean, he himself is this beautiful interview that Tottenham did with him the night we lost with Man City, where he'd made his debut, and he was like asking the ref if he could play a bit more and stuff like that. Everyone else just wants to get off the pitch.
Yeah,
He's like, carry on, carry on, and he kind of plays with that sort of style and stuff as well. He's such a good technician. But yeah, fitness wise, he'll be off, but he'll get that fitness. He's gone on tour with the first team. This is where he's going to hopefully get it. He's definitely going to be involved with the squad. But to go back to your Johnson point, yeah, I think Johnson is probably quite interesting off that,
yeah.
bear in mind at the moment. Couple of other little bits just wanted to cover off on Tottenham. These are not hugely fantasy relevant, although you might deem Lucas Bergvall to be relevant. I suppose he's sitting in my FPL
He's
draft.
in your draft, yeah.
He's in the draft at the moment,
And
so I suppose
Sudges.
relevant to me. Um, So obviously watched him at Hearts last week in the friend, and it's like, oh my God, what a good talent. And this was the opposite with Mikey. Seeing him on Saturday, it's like, yeah, he's going to be in the team really, really, really quickly,
Sure.
really quickly. What an absolutely beautiful footballer to watch. He just sucks people's in and plays pockets from around them. He'll go and take people on. He is. Sometimes you look at players and you go, I don't know how to define it. Whatever it is, he's got it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know
he's
what
going
you
to be a
mean. Some people just have that kind of X factor about
he's
them.
he's going to be a super player. We had a period of 15 minutes or so in the first half where we stopped playing, and it was when he went off injured.
Wow.
He only
So to
lasted.
see that influence
He
at,
went
how
off.
old is
Yeah,
he?
yeah. It
18.
was, it was the best player on the pitch in the first 25 minutes. Wasn't
Yeah.
even close, mate. Um, he went off injured at the start. I can confirm because I was like, oh no, there's the best 4.5 gone. Saw someone say, "Oh, I'm still going to go with Harry Winks. I want the minutes." No, 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 no. He did train for Tottenham in Japan last night,
Okay.
so he is fine. I don't know if
I think
maybe he got a dead leg or something like that. Maybe
right.
I'm
You
not
did
sure.
also say, sure, Winks has the minutes, but you said the one that's capable of kind of exploding is Bergwell, right?
Yeah, uh, do I think he'll start game week 1? At this moment, probably not. Probably less likely than likely. Um, but if I went with a strategy that was like, right, I intend to wildcard around sort of game week 18, I think he's going in for me.
Okay.
If I decide I'm going really short term, then I've no like requirement for that. I might be bench boosted. If I'm bench boosting in one, I'm not going to go with that player.
Yeah.
Unless I was certain, say if Madison was injured and I thought, oh shit, he might play the 10 position, then we're talking a different game maybe. But he's got the one thing that Madison and Kulusevski don't as well is a kind of real speed
Yeah.
in what he does. Yeah, he's going to be a really good player. Just a couple of other young Tottenham players I'm going to shout out because I hadn't spoken about him so much last week. Alfie Devine, who's largely an attacking midfielder, played the number 6 position in the second half.
Impress you?
Really good. Another one, really good. And Jed Spence played okay again
Oh, I forgot about him.
in the second
Is
half.
he staying with Tottenham then? Could he become a fantasy asset?
Well, he's gone on tour. As I said to you last week, we thought he was going to be jettisoned. It looks like he's been given a kind of a final chance, and fair game to him. He looks like he's trying to take it.
Is that, but
Um,
I take it he just plays the same role Porro does, right? So there's no chance or
yeah,
pathway for him there, is
real
there?
concentration issues, but obviously he's got that kind of real speed and burst of power. He's got good recovery. He can take a man on. His understanding needs real coaching to
Sure.
understand how to play in that layout. And I want to give a shout out to Luca Gunter as well, because I kept saying that Tottenham really need a new second choice goalkeeper. He would probably be fourth in line at the moment, but he played the second half on Saturday, young goalkeeper from the under 21 team, and he looked really good. Everything
Nice.
about him was on, like coming and claiming from crosses, quick distribution, comfortable with his feet. Thought, okay, maybe that will be one for me in a few years. That's ideal. Let's talk FIFA.
I feel like this is your element. I feel like this is you coming into Christmas. You've been talking about the fix not the fixture calendar. Yeah, it is the fixture calendar being a problem. And I know from a chip strategy perspective, and you're doing all of your things, you're planning the schedule, you're like, there's no place for these games. So go on, take it away. The leagues are suing FIFA over an abuse of dominance.
That's the headline. Yes. Essentially, the European clubs are now coming for FIFA. Um, Firstly, um, there is a bit of you ignorant bastards because you've just expanded the Champions League.
Yeah.
And not just expanded it, as in the amount of teams. You've put more games in the calendar.
Yeah.
Okay. It could be that you play. So an example would be if you didn't finish in the top 8 in the group stage, but went through to the playoff round. I think you're now looking at 17 games to win the tournament. I think,
Okay.
whereas before it was 13.
Yeah.
So
Extra
there's more
four
games
games,
there.
yeah.
And in terms of me and my spreadsheets and where will blanks and doubles go, yes, it's UEFA specifically that have ruined that rather than FIFA. So there's a couple of things that have really pushed things over the edge here where there's an attack on FIFA going on. And I think the timing's quite important as well. It's just off the back of the European Championship. And I think um largely across the whole month, most people didn't enjoy it.
Yeah,
I
I
think
would
this is
agree with
really
that.
important to reflect on that. Now, it might be an English psyche because we were largely not great fun to watch. But I think, things like Portugal, France, Belgium, Portugal, Slovenia, which I actually quite enjoyed from Slovenia's perspective. There was a lot of games there that the average neutral was just like, oh,
I'd
shit,
say a lot of
this.
my friends I've spoken to that don't really have a stake in supporting England have said the same. Like, so I don't think it's just an English thing.
Worth saying both semi-finals were quite good.
Yeah.
Just to counter that and give that a little bit of a balance. And even within the final, I think I guess for the neutral, the first half was awful, but the second half was probably quite interesting. I'm
Yeah.
gonna guess.
Do you bring that up though because my one of my theories is like, are these players just burnt out? Is the quality of football? Because I'm part in the headspace of has European football international European football become a bit too tactical and it's very systematic, or are players just on their feet, burnt out?
We have to look at the tournament when it was, and now obviously what happened with Qatar. And I think people largely thought the football there was quite good. It was
Yeah.
also played in their winter. It's worth caveating that the tournament in Germany was played in relatively mild conditions for summer. It was obviously a lot of rainfall, as many of you would have seen. But if you compare that with, for example, anybody who wants to go and Google what the temperatures will be in Spain this week, I would suggest there's a big problem in 2030. I've been saying for a sustained period now that I think the next World Cup will be the last World Cup played in summer.
Really? You think it'll be a permanent shift to
Yeah,
Winter World Cup?
yeah, yeah. I think that's their way of seeing it. And
Yeah.
FIFA as a global, if they want to, no, we're moving it to winter. I think that's what will
Yeah.
happen.
It's what they say it goes, isn't it?
Better for the footballers, etc.
So what are these Europe what are the top European leagues actually suing FIFA about then? Like, so they say abuse of dominance, and obviously FIFA's the world governing body. So it says in the article they're filing a complaint to the European Commission to protect the welfare of players. But
So
like you
I
said,
think
it's
there's a club concern that might happen, and the reason I particularly mention that, obviously 2026 is already set in terms of when it's going to be. 2030 is going to be in Spain, Portugal, Morocco. Right. Temperatures in Spain and sort of Morocco area are going to hit mid
yeah,
40s this week. Right. It's not, you can't play
you
football
can't
in
play
that.
football.
Right.
That's dangerous at
We've
that point.
agreed with that. So
Yeah,
what are you going to do? What happens if the World Cup in Spain, Portugal, Morocco, and it's one group stage in Argentina is going to be in Spain, Portugal, Morocco, and you get to that summer and it's like, bang, yeah, shit, it's 45 degrees at the end of June. What are you going to do? What are you actually going to do? Or
yeah.
even more to the point, what do we think we're going to watch?
Oh, it's gonna be awful. It's gonna be painful to watch.
Right. And the tournament after that is going to be what, in Saudi Arabia, most likely, isn't it?
Yeah,
So presumably that's going to
yeah,
go
that would
back
be
to winter,
similar as well. Yeah,
right? So, and then I think then that's it. It's done. Just moves, and I think you'll probably get all of them. The African tournaments or as in African nations is commonly actually played in winter now, isn't
yeah,
it? The Asia Cup's normally played in winter. There's been this
yeah.
big screaming about we need to move them in line with us. I think it's more likely actually in
We
forthcoming
need
years
to.
we might be moving to them.
Yeah,
I think it's a possibility, and people are going to hate that because it's going to break up the club season, etc., etc. But I do think it might happen ultimately, as with the Qatar World Cup. If that is a decision that FIFA made, good luck trying to stop it.
yeah. What impact would that have on domestic leagues then?
Well, it would look like what it looked like in the 21-22
But
season,
is
I
that
suppose.
sustainable to have that as a
Well,
solution?
if it became a regular calendar, yeah, it might even force in that clubs would maybe look regularly at having, say, our league would maybe look more, okay, shit, we don't normally play football at the start of December every 2 years now. Maybe we'll take a 2 week break then or something.
Yeah,
That would have a seismic impact, I think, on, say, Champions League, where you've got European games being played up to sort of like December the 18th, 19th or so this year. So that would obviously come off the calendar if it was November, December. Could, of course, be January, February,
yeah,
is obviously another potential option. It might be done that way. That might suit UEFA better, maybe, although they like to keep their clubs in the competition for as long as the calendar year goes on. So I don't suppose they want to be playing knockout games in December. Why are they coming from now? Well, I think there's been a big reaction to obviously the Club World Cup in 2025.
that's been expanded, right? Is it City and Chelsea are going to take part
City and
from?
Chelsea are due to take part.
Okay, due to, not guaranteed
It's a
to.
32 team tournament, same format as World Cup, um, 8 groups of 4, top 2 through, last 16, so on. Cleaner tournament than the European Championship, if you will. That's due to take place, I say due to take place in the USA, with games scheduled to be played largely on the east coast of the United States.
Yeah, why are you saying due to? Like,
Well,
what's the?
Clates, it's 24th of July, and in 12 months' time, this tournament will be over and done with. Now, I don't know about you, but we normally have to know where a Champions League final is going to be about 2 years in advance these days.
Yeah,
They haven't even announced the stadiums for this tournament yet.
none of them.
No.
Bloody hell.
Now, it's fairly simplistic to say it'd be a lot of stadiums that would be used at the World Cup the following year, I guess,
Yeah,
plus
but the
perhaps some
logistics
plus
of
some smaller ones. But I don't know, there should be in a process here really thinking about ticket sales and stuff like that by this stage. 29 of the 32 teams qualified are through. There is no there is no mass appeal for it. Like I wouldn't hear City or Chelsea fans going, I'm really excited for this tournament next year. Now, again, remove ourselves from Europe. Perhaps there's a lot more interest in it from around the world.
100%.
And I certainly accept that point of view that it's great for the non-European nations, perhaps even particularly the Brazilian clubs. Will be 3 Brazilian clubs in this to get to play the European teams, etc. Never mind your Eurasia or your Australia, your MLS, etc., etc. So from a global point of view, in theory, it's a really, really cool idea. Think of it like this from Manchester City's perspective. Or even think of it, let's use the Rodri example, right? In fact, no, I'll give you an even better one. Julian Alvarez. So Julian Alvarez has got the Olympics now. Was he at the Copa America as well?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was.
He's now got the Olympics starting. He's got the season coming around. City will be favourites for the Champions League near enough. Final of that is obviously at the end of the season. Club World Cup starts 2 weeks later. Gets better. Obviously, City go in that. They'll probably be favourites to win that as well. So go all the way in that. And then you're back for when for the Premier. The Premier League will start, I think, 4 weeks later. 3 or 4 weeks
Jesus
later.
Christ.
Because the Premier League's got to start earlier because then it's the World Cup the following
Yeah.
summer. Then you're getting a break.
No, he's not. But I guess someone, yeah, I guess I'm going into a ridiculous level of nuance here, but like he's not a 90-minute man in every game, is he? So I
Okay.
guess,
But
but
Rodri
like
is.
that, yeah, fair.
As a different
Yeah, that was
example.
a bad
And Rodri said
example
in
from.
April around City's biggest point of the season, like, I need a break.
Yeah, there's a lot of the players are coming out and speaking about their own welfare and how they're being
Yeah.
over. And I know people will be screaming, "Oh, but they're paid this and that." It doesn't change what your physical body is capable of, like no matter what amount of money you've got in your bank account. So a lot of them are coming out and saying about their own welfare. Yeah,
Yeah, guess what as well? Now to turn this back on the club's head. So look, FIFA obviously want a piece of the pie, right? They know what see the money UEFA make from the Champions League, all that. They want their own thing. I don't know if the clubs would make more from this than they'd make from just organise their own friendlies and stuff. I don't know at this stage. I don't know if there's anything out there that says what like prize money will be or
no,
things like that. I have no idea. Um, and it's also the tournament, the clubs that are in it, to a lot of the European clubs, isn't as attractive as just playing each other. Even when you look at the European clubs that are going to be in it, yeah, cool. City, Chelsea are in it, but you start, oh, there's no Arsenal, there's no Liverpool, there's no Man United, there's no Super Spurs getting close. And that falls to a lot of other nations as well. So you've got Salzburg have qualified because
okay.
of their
What's the
ranking.
criteria to qualify for this
Porto and
anyway?
Benfica. So the criteria for the European teams to qualify was you win the Champions League.
Yeah,
Um, so the only way you could get more than 2 clubs in per country was if you had more than 2 winners from the same country in a 4-year cycle. So just
sure,
hypothetically, if Arsenal won the Champions League this year, then City, Arsenal, and Chelsea would all be in it.
got it.
Okay. But obviously, as City and Chelsea had both won the Champions League over their 4 years, that 4-year cycle, they're the autos in for England. Otherwise, it would drop onto a ranking system.
Sure.
And I think it may have been City and Liverpool actually. I imagine actually
Yeah,
under
that would
under
make
that
sense.
circumstance. But because it was a max 2 per nation, that's how you've got like Porto and Benfica both going into it.
Yeah,
Nothing against those clubs, but I think the Cities and the Chelseas and Barca's and Madrid's would rather Liverpool, Manchester United were going than Benfica and Porto. So you've got a lot of the major clubs in the world not going to be in this tournament. Now, I get it; it's kind of split equally, like the World Cup and stuff. But all the major nations mainly get in unless Italy piss it up the wall or something like that, right? What I'm saying is, you don't go to a World Cup and have like 15 or 20 of the best nations aren't in it.
no,
1 or 2, sure.
but I guess that is literally what. No, you're right. It's a club World Cup. I was going to say that's what the Champions League is, but it's not because you've got play clubs from around the world. So yeah,
Unfortunately, if you were to put the 32 biggest clubs in the world in a
there
competition,
wouldn't be much from outside
90%
of
of it is
Europe.
going to be from Europe.
Yeah,
So, and we get that. And listen, there's always one of the beauty stories of international tournaments is some of the smaller nations having their first opportunities and stuff like that. But this tournament, this Club World Cup, is not grabbing attention.
No.
What the clubs think is it's a grab at money. It's also potentially stopping some of them from grabbing money.
Yeah, but like you say,
Um,
it's not grabbing our attention. But like you said earlier, from the other countries, this might be a huge deal for them. So,
let me throw a hypothetical scenario too. Let's say you're 10, 12 points clear in the title race come March,
God,
ahead
please.
of City. Don't rule it out. And City know they've got this Club World Cup at the end of the season to just jack in the Premier League season.
I don't think they do. I think they'll still go for it. I don't think like what's in it for City at this Club World Cup.
No, but
I,
let's say, I don't know, let's say you're on 80 points, City you're on 68, and Liverpool are on 52 in third or something. Like just obviously that's
yeah, yeah,
extreme. But City got nothing to play for. You just start telling like Rodri and Haaland and stuff, just go and
have
take
a
3 weeks
rest.
off. Because when you get in it
Uh,
otherwise,
Possibly, yeah. I thought you meant from the perspective of like keep your energy to try and win that. No, just from a preservative
yeah.
perspective, possibly. But I'd find it unlikely. But I can see why you would think that. Yeah,
Or what if Chelsea are
possibly. You're
11th
right.
again? As a
When are
different
they going to get
example.
that rest? Yeah,
What if Chelsea are 11th again? They just sack off the end of the Premier League season because they've got
it's
to
hard to
prepare for
know.
that.
It's a yeah. Can see your thought process there, but
Or
it's.
do they sack off the Club World Cup
I think
and
that's more
go
likely to be honest, because
go?
at least
I think they would be forced to take teams possibly, but do they go? Sorry, it's not our first team then.
yeah,
Is
like
that is
what
that a possibility?
possibly, yeah, because at least in the Premier League, you get prizes for like your position in the table and there's different incentives and stuff, right? I don't know what the financial reward is for the Club World Cup, but I'm making an assumption it's not going to be amazing. So
Have you
maybe
got
they
any
do just take
interest
a
in
minute.
it?
No, none. I don't give a toss. Even,
No, I
yeah,
think that the theory of the idea of the tournament is like nice. It's fine. It's certainly better than the one team gimmick, which
there's,
you know that 19 times out of 20, the European nation is just going to win anyway, and you can call them champions of the world. Lovely.
yeah.
Like this would crown a proper champion for a
Don't get
tournament.
me
Like
wrong. There's a little bit of me that's like, oh,
I
it's new,
like
it's
the
cool.
idea, but I think it's quite difficult to get off the ground because unless it had mass adjustment, you've got United's, Arsenal's, Liverpool's, Atletico Madrid's, Napoli's, Roma's, whatever you want, Marseille's, also not going to be a part of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if yeah, don't get me wrong, I probably will watch a couple of them just because there's teams from around the world I never really get the chance to watch, and I'm a football nerd, so I'll probably like to see that. But will I be tuned in every game? Probably not.
Right, I'm telling you, I've already told you, I'm taking next June off. Done. That's if it even happens, kids. Um, cheers, guys. I hope you enjoyed that as kind of just an open general
Yeah,
conversation
give us
about
feedback,
a
like James
few
said. It's a
football topics. You are
pilot
welcome to.
episode.
We won't do another one of these for a few weeks because I'm on holiday next week. Then it's correspondent week, starts August the 5th, and then we've obviously got a really big week of content in the week before the season starts. But then we'd like to come back and revisit these after the season has started in the future. You're more than welcome to throw us, actually, particularly just throw to Clayton. Suggested topic ideas were really good, but we'll try and keep them in terms of current trend. Clates, before we finish, something for you to cover, sir.
Go on.
Her game too.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's been cool to get involved with her game too. So for anyone listening that isn't aware of her game too, they're an award-winning campaign that was set up to kind of eradicate sexism across all sport. They are predominantly football, but they do have campaigns for other sports. And they started in COVID, so it was 2020, and the founder Kaz basically she was going through like a lot of abuse, the kind of stereotypical discrimination against women in football, and she found a group of other women that were kind of going through a same or similar discrimination, and they set up a campaign. And I don't know if you remember this, but it actually aired before the FA Cup final in 2020. And yeah, that kind of went viral on social media, and that's how Her Game 2 was born. And they've dabbled in a podcast series before, but then they stopped it, and I'm now the host for them. So they're looking to do two kind of podcast series. So one is what I'll be hosting for them, basically interviewing their ambassadors. So they've got a huge community of, they're all, should say they say this, they're a not-for-profit. So what they've managed to do is incredible. Everyone's a volunteer there, and they've got a team of ambassadors that are basically partnered with clubs to try and get official partnerships in place. And last time I spoke to Kaz, they've got partnerships with 78 of the 92 Football League clubs, which I think is phenomenal. But yeah, like I said, they were born in 2020 and they've just grown to the point where they're actually doing work with teams in Europe now as well. And yeah, so the podcast series from my perspective is going to be interviewing ambassadors, people within the industry to kind of promote and raise awareness around their campaign. And they're actually looking to start a WSL series for the new season as well. So they're doing some great work. And yeah, it's an honor to kind of be helping them with that. So we've done our first episode. So if you want to go check it out, yeah, it's called Her Game Too. And yeah, feedback welcome, but it's all about kind of raising awareness around sexism and discrimination in football, and hoping that a podcast series is a good way to achieve that.
Good. Congratulations to you, mate. That's really good to get involved with that as well. I couldn't help thinking though, we are trying to get sexism out of football. Is you went for a game too with that pink wall in the background, and I've got a light blue wall background in the
Um,
background of me. Does it mean we can stop expecting shitty Arsenal tweets from you now? That would be good.
I think so, yeah. No, no, you'll still get the shitty Arsenal tweets, but yeah.
Can you behave a bit more now? Yeah, is
I
that
think I'll
right?
have to behave a bit more,
Can you
yeah.
change? Can you change your handle?
No, handle will not be changing, unfortunately, James. Sorry.
Useless. Good stuff. Thank you, mate. Me and Clayton will be back tomorrow. As I said, we're gonna be looking at a number of the new signings in the Premier League. Who essentially we've defined this as me and Clayton want to do research into players that we've never seen. So we think between the two of us, if we've never seen them, that's going to mean that for the majority of you guys, and it won't be all of you, but for the majority, you probably won't know a lot about them either. So we want to get into those players tomorrow, see what we can find out about them. Clayton, thank you very much, pal. Be nice to each other, everyone. Cue music, please, man child.